For nearly 1400 years, one of the most incredible civilizations in human history was silent. The world of ancient Egypt, with its colossal pyramids, golden pharaohs, and its pantheon of strange gods, was lost to us. Their people, their triumphs, their deepest beliefs, all were locked behind a language of beautiful, intricate pictures that no one on earth could read. They were a whisper from the past that no one could hear. The accumulated wisdom of 3 millennia had simply vanished. But then, in the heat of a brutal war, a group of soldiers stumbled upon a single broken slab of dark rock. It was an accidental discovery that would change everything. This one stone would provide the key, the codebook to a forgotten world, and it would ignite a bitter 2-decade-long race between 2 brilliant minds and 2 rival nations to be the first to unlock the secrets of the pharaohs and make a silent civilization speak once more. The Kingdom of Silence. Before this discovery, looking upon the inscriptions of ancient Egypt was like staring into a void. For centuries, European scholars and adventurers had been captivated by the land of the Nile. They saw the breathtaking evidence of its genius all around them, from the haunting gaze of the Sphinx to the towering columns of Karnak, every surface covered in meticulously carved hieroglyphs. But the meaning was gone. The last people who could read and write the ancient script vanished around the 4th century AD, and with them, the knowledge of how it worked. The script itself became a thing of fantasy and wild speculation. Scholars in the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, with no frame of reference, basically projected their own ideas onto the symbols. They didn't see it as a functional language, but as some purely symbolic, mystical code. They believed each hieroglyph represented a complex, esoteric idea, a secret piece of philosophical or magical wisdom. A leading 17th century scholar, Athanasius Kircher, famously published massive volumes of translations that were entirely products of his own imagination. He was fantastically, completely wrong, but his work shows just how deep the misunderstanding ran. The world was trying to read a dictionary as if it were a book of spells. Imagine trying to understand our modern world if you could only look at pictures with zero knowledge of the alphabet. You might see the golden arches of McDonald's and conclude it was a symbol for a triumphant gateway to the heavens. You might see the Apple logo and believe it was a religious icon representing a forbidden fruit of knowledge. This was the state of Egyptology. It was a field built on guesswork, filtered through the often unreliable accounts of ancient Greek and Roman travelers like Herodotus, who visited Egypt long after its golden age and reported a mix of fact, hearsay, and myth. The consequences of this silence were profound. The history of Egypt was written not by the Egyptians themselves, but by their conquerors and neighbors. The grand pharaohs, like Khufu, Hatshepsut, and Ramesses the Great, were reduced to names in the Bible or figures of legend. Their own words, their decrees, their justifications for war, their hymns to their gods, all of it was silent. It was as if the entire Roman Empire had fallen and left behind only its architecture and art, with no one able to read a single word of Latin. 3,000 years of history, science, poetry, and religion were effectively erased, leaving behind only beautiful, inscrutable pictures. The puzzle seemed unsolvable. To rid the hieroglyphs, you would need a guide, a translation, and in a world where no one had spoken the language for over a millennium, finding one seemed impossible. A stone in the sand. The key wouldn't be found in a quiet library or a scholar's study. It was unearthed from the mud and chaos of war. The year is 1799. Europe is ablaze with conflict, and the ambitious French general Napoleon Bonaparte has launched a daring campaign, the invasion of Egypt. His goals were both military and imperial, to disrupt Britain's trade, routes to India, and establish a French foothold in the Middle East. But Napoleon, a product of the Enlightenment, had another ambition. His invasion was also a massive scientific expedition. Accompanying his army of 35,000 soldiers was a second army, the Commission des Sciences et des Arts. This was a corps of 167 of France's brightest minds, engineers, artists, mathematicians, and antiquarians. Their mission was to map, study, and document every aspect of Egypt, from its plants and animals to its ancient ruins. They were there to conquer not just the country, but its knowledge. In the blistering summer of July 1799, a detachment of French soldiers was strengthening the defenses of an old fort near the port town of Rosetta on the Nile Delta. They were tearing down an ancient wall to reuse the stone, a common practice back then. Amidst the rubble, an engineering officer named Pierre-François Bouchard spotted something unusual. It was a slab of dark, fine-grained stone, a type of granodiorite, not granite as is often said. It was broken and incomplete, but what made him stop was its surface. It was covered in 3 distinct bands of writing. The top section, the most damaged, was filled with the familiar hieroglyphs from the ancient monuments. The middle section was a script he didn't recognize, a series of cursive loops and dashes. And the bottom section was in a language every scholar knew, ancient Greek. Bouchard, an educated man, immediately grasped the incredible importance of what he was looking at. He wasn't a linguist, but he understood the principle of a multilingual inscription. If this stone contained the same text repeated in 3 different scripts, then the known Greek could be a direct guide to deciphering the unknown Egyptian scripts. This was potentially the key to everything. He carefully preserved the stone, and word quickly spread to the scholars in Cairo. But the stone's journey was far from over. It soon became a spoil of war. In 1801, the French army was defeated by British and Ottoman forces. During the surrender, a bitter dispute erupted over the antiquities the French had collected. The French scholars tried desperately to keep their finds, especially the stone. One of them declared they would burn all their discoveries rather than hand them over, exclaiming it would be like burning the Library of Alexandria a second time. But in the end, military reality won out. Under the terms of the Treaty of Alexandria, the stone, along with other priceless artifacts, was surrendered to the British. In 1802, it arrived in England and was presented to King George III, who decreed it should be placed in the British Museum for all the world to study. Its discovery was French, but its new home was British, a fact that would add a sharp, nationalistic edge to the intellectual battle that was about to begin. The Battle of Wits. With the Rosetta Stone in London, the race was on. The Greek text was translated pretty quickly. It confirmed the stone was a decree issued in Memphis in 196 BC by a council of Egyptian priests. It was written to honor the pharaoh on the first anniversary of his coronation, a 13-year-old king named Ptolemy V. The decree outlined all the good things the king had done for the temples, including donating silver and grain, and, most importantly, giving them a significant tax cut. In return, the priests pledged to erect statues of him in every temple across Egypt, so they knew what it said. But that didn't help them understand how the other 2 scripts worked. The hieroglyphic text was badly damaged, and the middle script, known as Demotic, was a highly cursive version of Egyptian that looked like a series of abstract squiggles. The puzzle was to connect these squiggles and pictures to the known Greek words. It would become an intellectual war waged on paper, a battle of wits that would consume 2 of the era's most brilliant minds. In the British corner was Thomas Young. Young was a phenomenon, a true polymath. A physician by trade, his genius was boundless. He made groundbreaking discoveries in physics, studied the mechanics of the human eye, and was an expert in just about everything. For him, the Rosetta Stone was the ultimate puzzle. Young approached the problem with methodical, scientific precision. he correctly figured out that the Demotic script was derived from the hieroglyphs. But his most famous contribution came when he focused on the oval shapes we now call cartouches. He correctly guessed that these cartouches must contain the name of a king. Working from the Greek text, he knew one of the cartouches had to spell Ptolemaios or Ptolemy. He brilliantly matched some of the sounds of the Greek name to the hieroglyphic symbols and correctly identified the phonetic values for P, T, L, M, and S. It was a monumental step. He had proven that hieroglyphs could at least sometimes represent sounds. But here, Young's genius faltered. He was held back by the old belief that the script was primarily symbolic. He convinced himself that phonetic spelling was just a special exception, used only for foreign rulers like the Greek Ptolemies. He couldn't make the leap to believe this principle applied to the entire language. He had found a key, but he only turned it one click before deciding the lock was still jammed. In the French corner was Jean-François Champollion. Where Young was a polymath, Champollion was an obsessive. From childhood, he was consumed by a single burning passion: ancient Egypt. He was a linguistic prodigy of staggering ability. By 16, he'd mastered not just Latin and Greek, but a dozen other languages. Most importantly, he dedicated himself to learning Coptic, the language of Egypt's Christian population, convinced it was the last surviving remnant of the ancient Egyptian language. Champollion lived and breathed this puzzle. He and Young corresponded, shared notes, and developed a tense, bitter rivalry. For over a decade, Champollion toiled in near poverty, poring over copies of any Egyptian text he could find. He was building a colossal mental database, waiting for the final pieces to fall into place. He knew he was close, but the final proof still eluded him. The race was about to reach its dramatic conclusion. The code is broken. The year is 1822. Champollion has Young's work on the name Ptolemy, and he now has new data. High-quality copies of inscriptions from a temple at Abu Simbel. One of these inscriptions contained a cartouche with 4 symbols. The first was a circle, a sun. From his knowledge of Coptic, Champollion knew the Coptic word for sun was Ra. So, the name began with Ra. The last 2 symbols were identical. A shape he already knew from Ptolemy's cartouche made the S sound. So the name was Ra-S. In the middle was a symbol whose value he didn't know, but his mind, saturated with Egyptian history, immediately jumped to one of the most famous pharaohs known from Greek texts, Ramesses. Could it be? If so, the middle symbol must stand for Mes. This suggested that phonetic spelling wasn't just for foreign kings. Ramesses was a classic Egyptian name. The final, earth-shattering proof came shortly after, in September of that year. He was examining another cartouche. This one began with the image of an ibis, the sacred animal of the god Thoth. The next symbol was the one he'd just theorized meant Mes, and the final symbol was the S sound, Thothmes-S, Thutmose, another great Egyptian pharaoh. That was the eureka moment. The whole system clicked into place. He understood it all at once. The hieroglyphic script wasn't one thing, but 3 things at the same time. It was a complex hybrid system. Some signs were phonetic, representing sounds like our alphabet. Other signs were logographic, representing an entire word, like how the symbol means love. And a third type, called determinatives, were silent pictures placed at the end of a word to clarify its meaning, like ending a man's name with a picture of a seated man. It was this breathtaking complexity that had eluded everyone. It wasn't a simple code. It was a sophisticated, multi-layered system. The legend says that upon making this final connection, Champollion was so overwhelmed that he leaped from his chair, ran to his brother's office and exclaimed, "Je tiens l'affaire! I've got it!" before promptly collapsing. He is said to have fainted from pure shock and exhaustion, remaining in a stupor for 5 days. Whether the story is embellished or not, it captures the magnitude of his breakthrough. The silence of 1400 years had finally been broken. A king's tax break. So after all that, the epic intellectual struggle, the race between nations, the eureka moment that changed history, what profound secret did the Rosetta Stone actually reveal? What cosmic truth was so important it had to be carved in stone in 3 languages? Well, the answer is famously a little mundane. The Great Rosetta Stone, the key to a lost civilization, is basically a piece of bureaucratic PR. The decree is a list of honors for the teenage King Ptolemy V, confirming his divine status and thanking him for his generous support of the priesthood. The most significant parts detail how the king cancelled debts owed by the temples, gave them grants of money and grain, and provided a widespread tax exemption for the clergy. In essence, it's a royal press release announcing a popular tax break to keep the powerful priestly class on his side. The decree was made during a period of major turmoil. The Ptolemaic dynasty were Greek rulers, and the native Egyptian population was often rebellious. The text was part of a larger political strategy to reinforce the king's authority by having Egyptian priests officially endorse his rule and display that endorsement in every temple in the land. So, the stone that unlocked 3,000 years of history was an ancient tax document. And that's perhaps the most wonderful irony of the whole story. The true value of the Rosetta Stone was never in what it said. Its value was that it taught us how to listen. It was the instruction manual for a language that had gone extinct. Because Champollion had cracked the code, he could now turn his attention to the countless other texts that had been mute for centuries. Suddenly, temple walls covered in inscriptions were no longer just decoration. They were historical records. The papyrus scrolls of the Book of the Dead were not magical gibberish, but detailed guides to the afterlife. The legal contracts, love poems, medical texts, and even the graffiti scrawled by tomb workers, all of it could now be read. An entire civilization in all its complexity and humanity burst forth from the silence. The stone's mundane message was the key that opened a library of wonders. The story of the Rosetta Stone is a powerful reminder of human curiosity and the obsession that can drive someone to solve an impossible puzzle. It shows how a single discovery can radically change our understanding of history. There are countless other stories like this one, other keys that have opened up forgotten worlds. If you want to explore more of these incredible historical puzzles, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Now for a question. Who do you think deserves more credit for the decipherment? The brilliant polymath Thomas Young, who took the first crucial steps, or the obsessive specialist Jean-François Champollion, who ran the final lap? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The decipherment of the Rosetta Stone was more than an academic exercise. It was the birth of modern Egyptology. For the first time, the study of ancient Egypt could be based not on the speculation of outsiders, but on the words of the Egyptians themselves. In 1828, a few years before his tragically early death, Jean-François Champollion fulfilled his life's dream. He traveled to Egypt. He sailed down the Nile, and for the first time he could stand before the great monuments of Karnak and Luxor, the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, and read the inscriptions on their walls as if he were reading a newspaper. He was having a direct conversation with people who had been dead for thousands of years. His work, and the work of the scholars who followed, completely transformed our view of the ancient world. We learned of the military exploits of Rameses the Great, the religious revolution of Akhenaten, and the intimate details of how ordinary people lived and loved. We learned about their sophisticated understanding of medicine, astronomy, and law. The Rosetta Stone didn't just allow us to translate a language, it allowed us to resurrect the minds and voices of an entire culture. Today, it stands in the British Museum, one of the most famous objects in the world. It's a symbol of discovery, of persistence, and of the fundamental human desire to connect with our own past. Thanks to this one broken, war-torn piece of stone, pulled from the mud of the Nile Delta, a 3,000-year-long conversation with one of humanity's greatest civilizations was reopened. A conversation that continues to reveal new secrets to this very day. The silence was broken, and the world has been listening ever since.